Imagine this. You've built an empire worth millions. You live in a sprawling mansion in Los Angeles, surrounded by luxury, power, and status. You've got it all: wealth, recognition, and the picture-perfect family. But beneath the polished surface, cracks begin to show. Love turns sour. Promises unravel. And before long, one of you will be fighting for your life, while the other secretly plots to take it away. This is the story of Dino Guglielmelli, a wealthy biotech CEO who seemed to have everything, and Monica, his stunning wife, a former model and pageant queen. To the world, they look like a glamorous couple straight out of a magazine. But behind closed doors, their marriage was toxic, turbulent, and dangerous. And when divorce and custody battles threatened Dino's empire, he made a chilling decision: to erase Monica from the picture permanently. What drives a man to turn his millions into a murder weapon? What kind of love story ends with a plot straight out of crime thriller? A husband hiring a hitman to kill the woman he once swore to cherish. Welcome to Cuffed and Curious, where we dive into the darkest corners of true crime. If you're new here, hit subscribe so you never miss a story that chills you to the bone. And if you're ready, let's unravel the sinister tale of Dino and Monica, a love story gone fatally wrong. To understand how this story spiraled into darkness, we need to start at the beginning, with two very different worlds that collided in Los Angeles. Meet Dino Guglielmelli. Born with ambition running through his veins, Dino wasn't just chasing success. He was determined to own it. By the early 2000s, he had carved out a fortune in the booming world of nutraceuticals, vitamins, supplements, and health products promising everything from glowing skin to stronger bodies. His company, Creations Garden, became a multi-million-dollar empire, supplying shelves of stores across the United States. Dino was the kind of man people called a visionary. His sharp suits, luxury cars, and Hollywood connections made him a fixture in elite circles. To many, he represented the American dream, a self-made millionaire who had turned powders and pills into power and prestige. But wealth has a way of attracting attention, and Dino was about to meet someone who, at first, seemed to be the perfect complement to his empire. Enter Monica Olson. Stunning, elegant, and ambitious, Monica was no stranger to the spotlight. A successful model and former beauty queen, she had graced runways, magazine covers, and the world of high fashion. With her striking looks and magnetic personality, Monica could turn heads the moment she entered a room. She wasn't just a pretty face. Monica had aspirations beyond the runway. She wanted stability, love, and a family. But the glittering lifestyle of Los Angeles can blur the line between fairy tale and facade. And when Monica crossed paths with Dino, it seemed at first like fate had handed her both love and luxury. Their worlds collided in Los Angeles, a city where ambition and beauty often meet. Dino, the wealthy businessman with a growing empire. Monica, the radiant model with dreams of her own. Their connection was instant, magnetic. He was captivated by her charm and grace. She was drawn to his confidence, his success, and the promise of a secure future. In the beginning, theirs was a whirlwind romance. Dinners at the finest restaurants, trips to exotic destinations, gifts that sparkled almost as brightly as Monica's smile. Friends described them as a power couple, the kind you'd expect to see gracing red carpets. But love built on wealth, beauty, and ambition can be fragile. What looked like a perfect match from the outside would soon reveal cracks beneath the surface. Behind the photographs and the fairy tale, shadows were already forming. On the outside, Dino and Monica looked like a match made in heaven. But behind closed doors, heaven began to look a lot like hell. Their relationship, once dazzling and romantic, slowly transformed into a battlefield, one fueled by jealousy, control, and betrayal. Friends noticed a change first. What began as passionate love soon shifted into constant conflict. Dino's temper, sharp and unpredictable, clashed with Monica's independence and her desire for a life outside his shadow. Arguments became routine, and the walls of their lavish mansion often echoed with raised voices instead of laughter. Monica, once radiant in the glow of new love, began to feel isolated. Dino's charm, the same confidence that had first attracted her, was now suffocating. He wanted her to be the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect accessory to his empire. But Monica wasn't a trophy. She was a woman with her own identity, her own dreams. And then came the whispers of jealousy. Dino, despite his wealth and status, was plagued by suspicion. He didn't like Monica's lingering ties to the modeling world, the late nights, the attention from other men, the spotlight she sometimes commanded. To him, it wasn't admiration, it was a threat. To her, it was her career, her independence. Their arguments grew sharper, cutting deeper each time. Accusations of betrayal and infidelity flew like daggers. Whether the rumors were true or not, the seed of distrust had been planted, and it began to grow like a poison. They say love is built on trust. And once trust is gone, what remains is not love at all, but a war. With Dino's empire came control. He controlled the finances, the home, and often the narrative of their marriage. Monica, however, wasn't willing to simply play along. She wanted her voice heard, her independence respected. But to Dino, any challenge to his authority felt like betrayal. What started as subtle manipulation soon became open hostility. Arguments about loyalty turned into battles about money. Battles about money turned into wars about custody of their children. Every fight left deeper scars, not just on their marriage, but on their souls. Money, which had once been the glue holding their lifestyle together, became the wedge that tore them apart. Dino's empire gave him immense power, and he used it as leverage. Control over Monica's lifestyle, control over her choices, control even over her future. But Monica was no longer willing to be controlled. She wanted freedom. She wanted out. And most of all, she wanted to protect her daughter. For Dino, that meant not only losing the woman he once adored, but also facing the humiliation of a messy divorce and the possibility of his empire being divided. And in Dino's world, losing was never an option. Not in business, not in life, and certainly not in marriage. As the marriage unraveled, Dino's desperation deepened. And when desperation mixes with ego and power, it can lead to unthinkable decisions. Decisions that would transform this toxic love story into a deadly plot. Every broken marriage reaches a crossroads. For Dino and Monica, that crossroads came in the form of divorce papers and a custody battle that would rip apart what was left of their fragile bond. And in that moment, everything shifted. What had been anger and resentment hardened into obsession and revenge. In 2011, after years of escalating conflict, Monica made her move. She separated from Dino, determined to build a new life for herself and her young daughter. But walking away from a man like Dino was never going to be simple, because with Monica's independence came a fight for custody, and with custody came the fight for Dino's pride, his fortune, and his very sense of control. The custody battle was bitter, brutal. Dino, once the confident CEO, now sat across from Monica in tense courtrooms, arguing over money, visitation, and trust. To him, this wasn't just about family, it was about winning. And losing custody of his daughter meant more than heartbreak. It meant humiliation. Court filings painted a picture of a marriage poisoned by mistrust and hostility. Monica accused Dino of being controlling, volatile, and dangerous. Dino painted Monica as manipulative, unfaithful, and unfit to parent. Each accusation drove the wedge deeper. And with each passing day, Dino's anger boiled closer to the surface. Divorce is often a test of endurance. But for Dino, it was a threat to everything he believed he owned. His empire, his wealth, his reputation, even his role as a father, were suddenly at stake. And the more he felt cornered, the more dangerous his thoughts became. Friends and associates began to notice a change in him. The confident businessman who once spoke of vitamins and profits now spoke in whispers of betrayal, of revenge. He was restless, sleepless, consumed by the idea that Monica was trying to destroy him. He felt stripped of power and desperate to take it back. And when desperation grips a man with wealth, influence, and connections, the possibility for destruction grows terrifyingly wide. It began as thoughts. Dark, fleeting ideas whispered in anger. What if Monica were gone? What if this endless battle ended not in court, but in silence? For most people, these thoughts would vanish as quickly as they appeared. But Dino's thoughts didn't vanish. They took root, and soon he began voicing them aloud. He confided in an acquaintance. hinting at his darkest intentions. What if he could make Monica disappear? What if he could pay someone to take care of her permanently? To Dino, it was starting to sound less like fantasy and more like a solution. The seeds of murder for hire had been planted, and soon they would grow into a plot so shocking it would shake even the seasoned detectives who uncovered it. The thought had taken root, and for Dino Guglielmelli, it was no longer a fleeting fantasy. It was a plan that would take him from boardrooms and luxury dinners straight into the underworld of murder for hire. In October 2013, Dino sat across from a man he thought could help him solve his problem. His voice was hushed, his words deliberate. This wasn't the angry rant of a bitter ex-husband. This was something far more dangerous. A man calmly negotiating the price of his wife's life. According to court records, Dino asked for something unthinkable. Can you make her disappear? He wasn't looking for reconciliation. He wasn't looking for closure. He was looking for a killer. Someone who would silence Monica forever. And he wasn't joking. He discussed money. He discussed timing. He discussed how he wanted it done. To him, it was a transaction, like closing a business deal. Only this time, the product was death. But what Dino didn't realize was that he was being watched. The man he confided in wasn't just a friend. He was an informant. And behind that informant was the FBI. Once the FBI got wind of Dino's plot, they launched a sting operation. Every word he spoke, every dollar he promised, was carefully recorded. For investigators, it was like peeling back the mask of a millionaire, revealing the cold, calculating man underneath. On tape, Dino was chillingly clear. He said he wanted Monica gone. He said he was willing to pay. He said he didn't care how it was done as long as it was permanent. She has to disappear. Those were his words, and they would become the nail in his coffin. The FBI played along, letting Dino believe his plan was moving forward. They wanted him to go deeper, to say more, to incriminate himself beyond doubt. Each meeting, each conversation, tightened the noose. At one point, Dino even discussed payment. He was prepared to hand over thousands to ensure Monica would never walk this earth again. In his mind, it was almost done. In reality, his every word was sealing his fate. On October 3rd, 2013, Dino Guglielmelli's plot came crashing down. FBI agents swooped in. The millionaire CEO, who once thought he could buy his way out of every problem, was now in shackles, charged with attempting to hire a hitman to murder his wife. The man who had built an empire on health and life was now exposed as someone who had plotted death, and the world was left to ask, how could a man who had everything risk it all for revenge? The arrest of Dino Guglielmelli sent shockwaves through Los Angeles. A millionaire CEO accused of plotting his wife's murder? Headlines screamed. Cameras flashed. And when the case went to trial, the courtroom became the stage for a chilling drama, one that would expose not just a crime, but the dark psychology behind it. From the start, Dino's trial had all the elements of a Hollywood thriller. A wealthy businessman, a glamorous wife, a murder-for-hire scheme, and an undercover FBI sting. The prosecution argued that Dino was a man who believed his money could buy anything, even a life. The defense countered that Dino never truly meant it, that he had been caught in a moment of rage, a victim of entrapment. But the jury didn't just have words. They had recordings, they had evidence, and they had the chilling voice of Dino himself, captured in the act of plotting his wife's death. When Monica took the stand, the courtroom fell silent. She was no longer the glamorous beauty queen. She was a mother, a survivor, a woman who had lived in the shadow of fear, now confronting the man who wanted her erased from the earth. She spoke of their marriage, of the control, the manipulation, the constant battles. She spoke of her love for her daughter, and the horror of learning that her father, the man once meant to protect, had plotted to destroy. Tears filled her eyes as she told the jury, "I never thought the man I married would want me dead." Her words cut through the courtroom like a blade, and for the first time, the world saw Dino not as a businessman, not as a husband, but as a predator. Then came the recordings. The prosecution played them aloud, filling the courtroom with Dino's own voice, cold, deliberate, unmistakable. On tape, Dino said, She has to disappear. He discussed paying thousands. He made it clear he didn't care how it was done, so long as it was done. There was no mistaking it. These weren't idle threats. This was a man orchestrating murder, like a business deal. Psychologists later described Dino's mindset as classic narcissism, a man so obsessed with control and power that he would rather destroy than lose. To him, Monica wasn't just his ex-wife. She was an enemy, an obstacle, and obstacles, in Dino's world, were meant to be eliminated. The jury listened. The world listened. And with every chilling word, the image of successful CEO crumbled, revealing the dark, dangerous man beneath. This wasn't just a trial about crime. It was a trial about control, obsession, and the devastating consequences of a man who believed his money could buy everything, even murder. And when the verdict came, the world finally had its answer. In every trial, there's a turning point, a moment so powerful that it shifts the entire case. For Dino Guglielmelli, that moment came when the prosecution pressed play on a recording. A simple device, hidden during a sting operation, captured the truth in his own voice. And what the jury heard was chilling. Suddenly, the courtroom filled with Dino's voice. Calm, cold, calculated. Not the voice of a man caught in a fit of anger. Not the voice of a husband desperate for reconciliation. But the voice of a man arranging death as if it were just another deal. She has to disappear. I don't care how it's done. Just make it permanent. He went further. He discussed money. He discussed timing. He even discussed how to make it look like an accident. Every word confirmed his intent. Every sentence stripped away any doubt. For the first time, the world learned exactly what Dino had asked for. He wasn't vague. He wasn't joking. He wanted Monica gone, and he was willing to pay thousands to make sure of it. She won't be a problem anymore. I'll have the money ready. Just make sure it's done. These weren't the words of a man being set up. These were the words of a man who believed his fortune could buy the end of his wife's life. As the recording ended, silence filled the courtroom. No one moved. No one breathed. The air was thick with the horror of what they had just heard. Monica sat frozen, her hands trembling. Jurors exchanged glances of disbelief. Reporters scribbled furiously, knowing this was a moment the world would remember. In that instant, Dino's fate was sealed. The powerful CEO, the millionaire entrepreneur, the man who thought he could control everything. Exposed, not by enemies, not by rivals, but by his own voice, by his own words, by his own arrogance. It was the sound of a man destroying himself, and it was the sound of justice finally closing in. The words had been spoken, the tapes had been played, and Dino Guglielmelli, once a millionaire CEO, husband, and father, now stood exposed as a man who plotted to kill the woman he once promised to love and protect. All that was left was the verdict. On the day of sentencing, the courtroom was packed. Reporters, family, and curious onlookers filled every seat, waiting to hear the fate of the man who believed his fortune could buy murder. Dino Guglielmelli pleaded guilty to one count of soliciting murder. In exchange for his plea, prosecutors dropped the more severe charges of attempted murder. But there would be no escape from justice. The judge sentenced Dino to 9 years in state prison, a sharp fall from the empire he once controlled. As the sentence was read, Dino showed little emotion. No tears. No outrage. Just a hollow shell of a man who had traded love for greed and freedom for obsession. For Monica, the moment was both painful and liberating. She had walked through the fire, from the collapse of her marriage to the chilling realization that the father of her child wanted her dead. And now, at last, she could breathe. Monica later told reporters she felt a mixture of relief and sorrow. Relief that justice had been served. Sorrow that the man she once loved would rather see her buried than free. But above all, she was grateful to be alive, and grateful that her daughter would still have a mother. The public's response was swift and unforgiving. Dino's fall from grace made headlines across the nation. How could a man who built a business on health and life plot death so casually? How could a millionaire with everything to lose gamble at all in such a reckless, cruel way? Once admired as a self-made entrepreneur, Dino was now branded forever as a criminal, a cautionary tale of greed, power, and obsession. His empire crumbled, his reputation destroyed, his name stained permanently by his choices. In the end, the justice system did what Dino could not. It silenced his plan. It stopped his obsession. And it ensured that the woman he targeted would live to tell her story. Justice had been served, but the lessons of this case were far from over. Dino Guglielmelli's story isn't just about one man's crime. It's about something bigger: the dangers of greed, the thirst for control, and the devastating choices people make when power becomes more important than love. Dino had everything most people dream of: money, status, a family, a future. But it wasn't enough. His desire to control Monica, to punish her for walking away, to silence her independence, consumed him. And in the end, it destroyed him. Monica's courage reminds us of the strength it takes to face fear head-on. She survived betrayal. She survived danger. And she survived a plot meant to erase her. Her story is not just about victimhood. It's about survival, resilience, and reclaiming her life. This case is a warning. Money cannot buy happiness. Power cannot guarantee loyalty. And control, when taken to the extreme, destroys everything in its path. If anything, Dino's downfall shows us that when love turns toxic, when obsession turns to violence, the price is always higher than anyone expects. If you were gripped by this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Cuff and Curious, where justice speaks and truth is never silent. Because behind every crime there's a lesson, and together we'll uncover them all.